What are these Upanishads? The Upanishads are part of the Vedas. And they contain the most glorious knowledge of God. They contain the knowledge of the soul. They tell us who we are. For instance, Shvetashvatara speaks about the Atma in great detail. We question the Upanishads. What does a soul look like? How small is the soul? And Shvetashvatara says, Balagrashat bhagasya shatadha kalpitasya cha bhago jiva savigyeya sachanantyaya kalpate. The size of the soul? Well, understand it in this way. Just pull out a hair from your head, a single strand, and divide it widthwise into 100 parts. And we know that's impossible. Nobody has that thick hair. Divide one strand of hair into 100 parts, and then take one of those parts and divide it further into 100 parts. In other words, divide one hair into 10,000 parts. That is the size of the soul. Where does the soul live? Again, the Upanishads tell us the soul lives in the heart. The heart that pumps blood? No, the subtle heart, the sukshma hridaya. Hridi hyesha atma. The Upanishads tell us that the soul lives in the subtle heart. Is there one soul or are there many souls? Shvetashvatara Upanishad says, Sachanantyaya kalpate. There are ananta, countless souls. They cannot be counted. They are innumerable. Are new souls born? We ask. The Upanishad said no, because the soul is eternal. If a new soul is born, then it will have to die one day, and that would mean the soul is not eternal. So the Upanishads give us the most glorious knowledge of the soul and the supreme soul. And there are 108 Upanishads. Sri Maharaj quotes from many, many of them. You know that. In fact, recently, just a couple of years ago, Sri Maharaj quoted for the very first time from an Upanishad that we had never heard about, Dvayopanishad. Then another one, Yogashikhopanishad. Because his knowledge is unlimited, he reveals as much knowledge as is necessary for the seeker who is listening to him. There are 108 Upanishads. There is so much knowledge. And by the way, the Vedas originally contained 1,130 branches of knowledge. But today we have only 15 available to us. However, we should not worry about anything, because even those 15 branches of knowledge give us sufficient knowledge. They give us more than enough information about the soul and the supreme soul and how to reach our ultimate goal of life. So we have the 4 Vedas, and we have the Upanishads. You hear about Vedant or Brahma Sutra. What is that, Vedant? It's one of the Shad-darshan. It's one of the 6 systems of philosophy in Hinduism. The Shad-darshan are Nyaya, Vaisheshik, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsa, and Vedant, which is also known, but lesser known as Uttar Mimamsa. Vedant is the most important darshan, philosophy of all the 6. And it's also known as Brahma Sutra. You hear Sri Maharaj quoting from Brahma Sutra. And sometimes you hear him saying Vedant. They're one and the same. Vedant and Brahma Sutra. Vedant means Ved ka ant, the end part of the Vedas, and that's what Vedant is. Again, the most glorious knowledge of the soul and the supreme soul. This is why the Vedantic philosophy is considered to be very glorious, very high, because it gives the highest knowledge of the soul and the supreme soul. Then there are 2 historical scriptures, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. The Mahabharata was written 50 years after the fierce battle of Mahabharata was fought, once again by Vedavyas. Vedavyas has written very extensively, because Vedanta is from Vedavyas, And Mahabharata is written by Vedavyas. Then I'll come to the 18 Purans. They are also penned by Vedavyas, or he reveals them to the world. So there are two historical scriptures, Mahabharata and Ramayana, and Mahabharata Granth contains 100,000 verses in it. It's a very lengthy scripture. 100,000 verses. And 700 of those verses are those of the Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, that is so popular all over the world, is just a small part of the Mahabharata scripture. It has very important knowledge, but we must know that it is a part of the Mahabharata Granth. 700 verses, divided into 18 chapters. Because Vedavyas is writing down the Mahabharata, what happened in the Mahabharata, and as part of the Mahabharata battle, Lord Krishna is telling Arjun what he should be doing. In other words, what we should all be doing in life. Arjun is asking questions, Shri Krishna is answering. What a question and answer session that must have been. Arjun is asking the questions, and Arjun is completely knowledgeable. He has no less knowledge than Lord Krishna himself, and yet he is representing all of us, and we are ignorant, so he's asking questions. And Lord Krishna, the Supreme Lord himself, is answering those questions. And that is the Bhagavad Gita. Most of you, if not all of you, know about that. And that Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata Granth. The other historical scripture is Ramayana, and there are many versions of the Ramayana. Mostly two are most well known. One is Valmiki Ramayana, written in Sanskrit, and the other is Tulsikrit Ramayana, also referred to as Ramcharit Manas. Ramcharit Manas, Tulsidas Ji's Ramayana, which is written in the more familiar vernacular, so people may understand it. It's a mixture of Awadhi and Bhojpuri, so it's like Hindi. So many people understand it, they like to recite it. But the Ramayana does not only tell us about the story of Ram, there is deep knowledge contained in the Ramayana. People like to recite and sing the Sundarkand. They like to chant one section of the Ramayana, mostly Sundarkand. It's very popular. And they recite it, but the knowledge of the Ramayana is very deep. One is a story part, one part of the Ramayana is the story part, the other is the knowledge part. And the knowledge part is just exquisite. Valmiki Ji's Ramayana is in Sanskrit, so less people understand it. More people understand the Tulsikrit Ramayana. Or at least they can read it and they can understand some of it. The story part anyhow. The knowledge part will have to be explained by the Guru, but the story part is very interesting and we can read it. Anyone can read it. So anyone who knows how to read Hindi can read it. So these are the two historical scriptures. But many other saints have written the story of Ram. Ramayana simply means the story of Ram. That's it. The story of Ram. And there are many saints who have written this story, and so there are many versions of the Ramayana. But as I said, the most well-known being the Valmiki Ramayana and Tulsikrit Ramayana. Then there are the Purans. You hear about Pauranik Kathaएं, the Puranic tales. They are very interesting tales from the Purans. And there are 18 Purans. Some of them being Agni Puran, Vayu Puran, Narad Puran, Shiv Puran, Garud Puran, Vishnu Puran, Brahma Vaivart Puran, Devi Bhagwat Puran, Markandeya Puran. There are 18 Purans, the most well-known being the Bhagwat Puran. Many people get confused between Bhagwat and the Bhagavad Gita. And they use them interchangeably. But Bhagavad Gita is different, which is more commonly referred to as a Gita. Bhagwat simply means godly. We say Bhagwan, so Bhagwad Gita. But Bhagwat also has to do with God, but it's totally different. It's a Puran, Bhagwat Puran, and we refer to it also as Bhagwatam, and sometimes it's referred to as Bhagwat Mahapuran.